Hello watch enthusiasts and welcome to Watch Chronicler. In today's video I'd like to discuss 5 important watches released this month which offer interesting design, history or ingenuity. These range from a new Mark II inspired by 1940s military action to a regulator with a design from a now legendary Alain Silberstein. However, before I begin the video, make sure that you like, share and subscribe to catch all the latest videos about the watch world. Also follow Watch Chronicler on Instagram to see photography, video previews and to be notified of newly published articles. On that note, head over to watchchronicler.com to read full articles about some of the watches in this video, as well as the groundbreaking new Erlang and Zöhner Odysseus Datamatic, and the celebration of the iconic Bauhaus school with 5 perhaps unexpected watches. Articles are published here multiple times a week to keep you up to date on what's what in the watch world. The first watch in this video is one from a small US-based brand called Mark II. Their origins are found in watch modding, but today they make a selection of historical remakes and pieces simply inspired by the past under the leadership of Bill Yao. The watch to be discussed today is the Cruxible Helion. The standard Cruxible has featured in the Mark II range for a while and replicates the A11 hack watches worn by US armed forces during the Second World War. Importantly, these watches were truly crucial to the US war effort as they offered an accurate tool for servicemen to wear. The Helion is an offshoot of the Cruxible, and to my eye is a significant aesthetic improvement, which deviates from history a bit. Taken from an experimental and ultimately unfruitful weapons system for clearing beaches before an attack, Helion was a name later applied to military pilots over the Pacific and military divers who defied odds with their bravery. The watch, though, features the same 39mm stainless steel case as the Cruxible, with a thickness of 13.55mm and a lug-to-lug measurement of 48.5mm. The lugs are also the same flat shape with turned down ends so as to hug the wrist more effectively, whilst the oversized crown screws down to offer 100-metre water resistance. Where this case differentiates itself is in its fully polished surface, thus giving a feel more akin to those watches from the 1940s than a brushed finish. Beneath the double-domed internally anti-reflective sapphire crystal, the dial of this watch is matte black and a delicate rethink of the original. The hands have enjoyed a redesign, thus changing from sword to syringe shape, and this delicate rethink has also been applied to the second hand, which is now white with a generous counterweight, which gives a great deal of balance to the dial. A lovely touch is the glossy black paint for a stealthy depth rating and logo to not distract the eye from the time, and luminescence is offered in Superluminova BGW9 on the hands as well as on dial pips, thus giving very good legibility and balance in the dark. Behind the comfortably domed caseback is housed a Seiko NE15C, the publicly available version of the 6R15, with a 50-hour power reserve and automatic winding as well as manual winding from the crown. Naturally, this movement hacks to set the seconds, as per the history of this particular style of watch, but unusually for the price of $649 US, this watch is regulated to 3 positions, and like other Mark II offerings, I'm certain it will be of extremely good quality. A few weeks ago, Longines added to their already significant catalogue of impeccably designed vintage remakes, with perhaps the best one yet. The Longines Heritage Classic offers a minimalistically purposeful remake of a dress watch from 1934. Typical for its time but no less lovely for it, the original watch featured a simple and robust brushed steel case with thick lugs and a flat bezel. Perhaps most importantly, it featured the sector dial. More simple relatives of scientific dials, sector dials started to appear in the 1930s with beautifully patterned sectors to give an austere but immensely legible look. The new watch largely recreates this original aesthetic, with a 38.5mm stainless steel case and a brushed finish and a box domed sapphire crystal with several anti-reflective coatings for good measure. The crown is perhaps the most different aspect, as it's been thickened ever so slightly. The dial of this watch is, however, where it really stands out. The hands remain the same style as the originals, with thermal bluing and a gentle curve to their cross-section, in addition to a beautiful polished metal cap at their centre, where the central seconds would normally be placed. In truth, these hands represent some of the best currently available on the market, and one underrated aspect of these is that they reach their respective markers perfectly, which is something of a rarity. The dial itself is a beautiful piece with a pairing of less reflective matted finishes in the centre and rim, whilst the sector of the dial with the markers is delicately brushed. The result is a very subtle but evident variation in colour, which is extremely appealing and transcends the vintage style of the watch. The dial printing is very well selected too, with just Longines and Swiss made appearing. For me, the only fault with this design is the placement of the small seconds, which appears a bit too high up, but the reason for this is the movement chosen, which is on all counts an incredible one to get for £1,760. Inside this watch is the automatic L893.5, which is derived from the ETA 2895, with a reduced beat rate of 3.5 Hz in order to give a longer 64-hour power reserve. Importantly though, it has a silicon balance spring, which gives magnetic resistance to this watch. And so as a watch operating in a price lower than ETA-powered Tudors, I think it's fantastically well priced and very well designed too. Putting aside my long-term support for Formex as a brand, it is rare to come across a watch which promises to change its respective price segment. However, I have good reason to believe that the new Formex Essence Leggera will do so for multifunctional sports watches under about £2,000. Offering the same case dimensions and design as the normal Essence as I reviewed it last year, this watch is 43mm wide by 10mm tall. The only difference is that now crown guards are built into the case. Another aspect which is carried over from the standard watch is the case suspension system. With the use of 4 springs, the internal case is supported within the external case so as to conform to the wrist whilst also absorbing shocks otherwise suffered by the movement. Impressively, it still does keep 100-metre water resistance. It really is though the materials which have been exploited impressively on this watch, with the external case, including the lugs and crown guards, being made from injected carbon fibre composite in order to sacrifice no strength but weigh 40% less than steel. By contrast, the parts of the watch likely to suffer more abuse are made from zirconia ceramic in order to give a glossy surface 5 times as hard as steel, and this includes the bezel and the crown. With a titanium movement housing, this watch tips the scales at only 50 grams. Under an anti-reflective sapphire crystal, one is offered 3 dial options. The first 2 for a price of £1,650 are painted brass in blue or grey, whilst for £1,850 you get a forged carbon dial to reduce the weight even further, but also to create an aesthetic which really fits with the black colour of the case and the bezel. Of course, both dial variants have applied markers, luminous hands, and the date at 6. The movement chosen is an interesting departure from the usual Solita movement found in the standard Essence, as this time Formex have chosen to use the STP-1-11 movement, which was developed by the Fossil Group. Following the same architecture as the ETA 2824, it features 26 jewels and runs at the same 4 Hz. However, the power reserve has been increased to 44 hours, and the movement is chronometer grade as standard, which is then enhanced by COSC certification. The movement is also nicely decorated with thermally blued screws and a skeletonized rotor. And so as you can imagine, I'm very much looking forward to reviewing this piece in the coming months. At the end of the 20th century, the designer and architect Alain Silberstein was known for creating extremely imaginative watches on the base of very respectable Swiss movements, and with their bright colours and wacky hand designs, they highlighted a very different approach to watchmaking. Rather interestingly though, he's never worked on a regulator, which is a style of watch which was conceived to separate the hours, the minutes and the seconds, and regulators were clocks or watches originally used for regulation of other watches by watchmakers. As the 4th watch in this video, I'd like to present the Louis Erard and Alain Silberstein Excellence Regulator. This collaboration brings something rather new to the table, and inevitably for a smaller Swiss brand, the price of this watch is rather less imposing than those of the watches previously made by this eminent designer. The general design of this watch is relatively simple, with a polished seal case, or one with a matte finish and black PVD treatment, and both are of 40mm diameter. To add to the case, it has an exhibition case back, but also a rather well-chosen double anti-reflective sapphire crystal, which gives an interesting balance of resilience to the elements, but also high legibility, which is very appropriate for a dress watch of this type. The movement inside this watch is similarly simple, but very well chosen, in the form of the Pissot 7001, or ETA 7001, depending upon what you want to call it. This manual movement, which forms the basis of the Normos Alpha caliber, will be both reliable and serviceable for the foreseeable future, giving you real peace of mind. This movement gives a 3 Hz beat rate, that's 6 ticks per second, and a 42-hour power reserve, and whilst judging by the flanged spokes of the balance wheel, one can also assume that this movement is a chronometer grade, which fits with the fact that all of these Louis Erard movements of this variety are regulated to plus or minus 7 seconds per day. To add to this, it is thoroughly decorated with blued screws, and is modified in-house to have a regulator display and power reserve on the dial. The centrepiece, though, is undoubtedly the dial, with black and white models available. Of course, the colours vary between components on each in order to give better balance, but the arrangement is the same, with a large triangular hand for the hours and a snake-like second hand. The central minute hand is, however, the most eye-catching, in the form of an immense arrow across the dial. In fact, my only criticism of this watch is the fact that the minute hand seems slightly too short for its function, although this is a very minor quibble when the design mirrors the aesthetic put forward by Silberstein throughout his years designing watches extremely well. The price for this unique watch is not insignificant, with the variants costing 2,800 and 2,900 Swiss francs respectively. With that being said, I have no doubt that the appeal of this new Alain Silberstein design, paired with an attractive watch, will sell all 178 pieces of each model with relative ease. Whether you admire quartz watches or, like George Daniels, you regard them as the product of damned electricians, their impact was immense when the first modern quartz watch came to market in the form of the Seiko Quartz Astron, a truly dreadful Christmas present for the Swiss watch industry in 1969. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of this legendary watch, Seiko created a limited edition of 50 pieces. As with the original, this watch features a cushion-shaped 18-karat yellow gold case with a unique finish which, in the new watch, offers 100 meter water resistance. The dimensions are 40.2mm by 12.8mm in thickness, a relatively modest size when one considers the complication within it. To continue the vintage note, this watch is given a box-shaped crystal which is now sapphire, yet it's the dial where we begin to see that this is more than just a simple quartz watch, and something far more interesting and forward-looking. Incorporated into the eminently delicate brushed golden dial with black markers is a photovoltaic cell. That's because this watch, unlike the original Quartz Astron, is a GPS solar watch and the most moderately proportioned you'll find. Aside from offering an essentially limitless power reserve, the caliber 3x22 inside synchronises twice a day to the time zone and also gives a perpetual calendar. It can also be adjusted manually using the crown, whilst the pushers give different functions and allow you to prompt the watch to synchronise if you want it to do so before the twice a day window. Ironically though, with a plus or minus 15 second per month accuracy, if not connected to a GPS signal, this watch is almost 3 times less accurate than the watch which spawned it, which I find quite amusing and shows this change in philosophy, in the sense that for this watch Seiko has gone for a much more pragmatic route than the high accuracy movements they make, for example, for Grand Seiko, which shows just a different philosophy, not necessarily lesser quality, but just a different view on this particular approach to sheer accuracy which is delivered by quartz. In truth, this is an excellent way for Seiko to commemorate their history, while still looking forward, although I do feel that whilst the price of $36,000 fits with the original price, it doesn't really look the part. The caseback with its mixed text and CE logo looks like something under £100, quite frankly. And this really is the oddity of this watch for me, because despite the fact that it's a handmade watch of, I'm sure, impeccable quality, has a brilliant history and also a phenomenal movement within it, it leaves me completely cold because I just feel the execution and the care taken to design the watch satisfactorily has been neglected despite the price of this piece, which is a strange position to be in, and I'd be very curious to hear what you have to say about this in the comments down below. Anyway though, I'll conclude the video there on that slightly peculiar note, but one which I think deserves a little bit of discussion. And so tell me what you thought about this point, but also about the rest of these watches in the comments down below, because I'm always very curious to hear what you have to say about them. Do also remember to head over to watchchronicler.com for the full article versions of several of these watches in the video. And if you enjoyed the video, then do remember to like, share and subscribe to help the channel and see more here in future. So thank you very much for watching. This is Armand from watchchronicler.com. Out.